Hello and welcome back to Vikings Happy Hour, presented to you by Lake Monster Brewing, and that's Badass Wood Art. Lake Monster Brewing, you got to hit it up. They got some of the best beers, craft beers here in the Twin Cities metro area. Anything from sour to sweet to bitter, whatever you need, they got your needs. So go hit up Lake Monster Brewing in St. Paul, Minnesota for your craft beer needs. Miles, how are we doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Excited to talk a little bit on the NFL Combine, a little recap episode here, talking about some of the prospects that we that impressed us, maybe a few that maybe disappointed. And I'd love to dive in just because there's so much content to go over and only a short amount of time to go over it. So why don't we start off with the offense? I know that's kind of your bread and butter. You love the offense here. So who are some of the different prospects? We can do it by position group: quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, lineman, whoever you want to go with. Let's just kind of dive in.
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious one for we talk about just winners and like headliners, of course, is Anthony Richardson. I mean, that dude, that dude was unreal. Like I'd made a comment. I know our buddy Tyler Fornes had tweeted out like he thinks that his combine performance kind of catapulted him into more of that one-on-one discussion. And I thought he might have had that discussion going in because I always assumed he was like uber athletic, like an elite athlete, but I don't think anybody could have predicted like historical. The numbers he put up, like it was like a low 4.40. He jumped like 41 and a half, I think, vertical 40 and a half, something like that.
40 and a half, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Like ridiculous. So a dude that's almost 250 pounds, like I think the comps we saw flying around Twitter were like Dante Culpepper, and I think it's a really good comparison in that like the build, the body type, and all that of an Anthony Richardson is comparable to like a Dante Culpepper in that way, and the arm strength as well. Like both guys had cannons for arms and could move, especially for their size. So he was really fun to watch. He's just a guy that like if you get the right coach and the right opportunity around him, I just it'd be hard for me to expect him to fail. I don't want any of these guys to fail. I'll preface by saying that, but like it'd be hard for me to see a guy like that fail because there's a baseline of ability that he has that you should be able to work with. And then you just hope some of the other things develop behind it. But he was one of the guys that, like, for obvious reasons, I think everybody's going to be talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a player like him, and obviously we're Vikings fans, so we're going to put a Vikings spin on this. Him being able to come into a situation like ours, if we didn't have to give up too much to go get him, right? I don't know if it vaulted him to 101 or 1-1 conversation because another guy I think had an incredible day was CJ Stroud. And I think CJ was already ahead of Richardson pre-draft. And then to put on the throwing performance he did at the draft was, pretty incredible. But back to Richardson, you look at, a player like him who probably does need a bit of development and maybe sitting under a very experienced and very good quarterback in Kirk Cousins for a year while he, can learn some of the nuances and tighten up some of the mechanical part of his games. I think could really do a service for him. And to your point, then lead to a much more long-term successful career for him. You hit it out of the park there with the Richardson knocking it out of the park. You did a great job.
And you highlighting it toward the Vikings is that it's not just Kirk Cousins sitting behind. He gets Kevin O'Connell, who is a former NFL quarterback, an athletic quarterback as well. I know he's obviously not in the same realm as Anthony Richardson, but a guy that it's a quarterback that you would it's a coach that you would trust. I think we don't know how Kevin O'Connell is going to develop a younger quarterback, but I think we have enough faith in the structure and the ability of Kevin O'Connell as a teacher, as a coach, to be able to put his fine print and his footprint on a young prospect any of these quarterbacks, but Anthony Richardson specifically, to hopefully be able to help him unleash some of the other potential that he has, besides just the athleticism. And so it's also being able to sit behind a really good quarterback in Kirk, but also have a coach behind the scenes and a Wes Phillips too, who's a pretty good coordinator as well, to be able to develop a quarterback like Anthony Richardson and untap that potential that he has.
Yeah, absolutely. Another quarterback I thought that did well, and we can move off quarterbacks from here, is Stetson Bennett. Granted, I don't think anyone is going to assume that this kid is going to he's like 25, that is going to come in and just be an all-star, right? But you look at his performance there, I think he answered some questions around arm strength. I think he answered some questions around just ball placement, and he ran faster than he was anticipated to. So, I think he probably improved his stock enough to probably jump from a super late pick to, maybe into that more mid round discussion there. Running
Yeah, I
backs for
always
yes. Go ahead.
real quick on Stetson Bennett. I always viewed him. I thought he should have been at Mobile, but whatever. Like that stuff happens. I He's a guy to me that I always viewed as like if you're going to draft him, he's like an immediate backup type quarterback that has starter potential or like ability. I'm not like kind of like in that Case Keenum realm. Like I think he can get you maybe if you had to a season, but he's not like a long term starter to me. He's more of like a fill in, but someone that you can get a lot of like you can get some upside from, not like a like really high ceiling, but like more like high end backup ceiling, like
Yeah.
low end starter, high end backup ability. And so that's kind of where I see it. So to your point, I think he kind of solidified like there's that ability there for him to be a fourth, fifth, sixth round pick, but like be that guy that if the Vikings were to like want to just bring in a guy, let's tie it back to the Vikings. Stetson Bennett could be a guy that maybe you draft him, he's your backup in 2023, and then maybe he's your like starter, and then you still go find a quarterback in the draft next year, but you have him as like a bridge type player as well.
Yep, absolutely. Now running back for yesterday, offensive linemen were yesterday. Anyone that stood out to you that we were like, wow, like, hey, if we move on from Dalvin Cook, or hey, we need a center, or a guard if we're worried about Ezra Cleveland leaving after next year. Who were some of those guys that really stood out to you yesterday?
Well, yeah, you had touched on running back, and I think for me, Evan Hall was one of the guys I know. He ended up running in the like mid 4.4s at
Yep.
a little over 5'10", 200. And what did he end up? Let me real quick.
He's like
two
210.
about 210. So I think he fit in at the perfect measurables. He was a guy at the Senior Bowl that kind of got overlooked by Tyjae Spears and a few of those other guys, McIntosh and those guys. So I thought he looked really good, and he's a guy that he kind of gives you a little bit of both. He's a really versatile back. He's a guy that can run between the tackles, but he also showed with his 40 that he can run a little bit as well. But he can pass protect, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. So he kind of gives you like, obviously he's not like a Bijan Robinson. He's not a Jahmyr Gibbs. He's not that guy. But I think if you're looking for a mid-round running back to come in and like kind of fill a need, I think Evan Hall would be a really good back to bring him to your system and kind of plug and play right away. Again, might not give you some of the high upside that the top end guys are going to give you, but I think he kind of fits into that. Like, I think he's a plug and play starter from day one type of back.
Oh, wow, yeah. I mean, he did perform well at Mobile, right? And I did love. Sorry, I kept like smirking and laughing while you're talking. How every carry he took yesterday, he took it to the end zone. Like, it doesn't matter if he had to run 80 yards for it. He did it every time. So and they called it on the broadcast. So it was pretty funny. I know somebody who didn't impress you quite as much in Mobile, but I think he did a really good job yesterday in terms of just at least solidifying his pure athletic ability. Is Chase Brown. I hope that he can see the field as well as he can run the field because the athletic traits there are there. And I think that would be a mid-round guy that would be perfect for us as well.
Is that where you see him going?
I can't imagine he goes. I mean, I don't outside of Robinson, I don't really see any running back going at least until day 2. Like Bijan Robinson's day 1 lock. Maybe Gibbs, but like I'm assuming we're talking Gibbs in like round 2, maybe.
Gibbs is kind of like that Travis Etienne to me, where he's like maybe a late first because a team might want to take him, but like maybe he's definitely an early day 2 guy for sure.
But like I don't see there's enough separation from like, and I don't know how to say his last name, but like Charbonnet and Chase Brown and Tank Bigsby and some of those guys. I don't see enough separation where like you have to go up and get them. I think there's enough mid-round guys. Tyjae Spears, another one, where you can probably get them, round 3, round 4. And like Eric Gray, I mean, he's kind of in that discussion as well, right? So I think, you can probably wait to day 3 and one of these guys is going to slip. I don't know if Chase Brown is going to be that guy, but somebody is going to, and you're going to get Evan Hall, right? That's another, really good example where if one of these guys is going to slip, you're going to get a good contributor. Cody Mauch, North Dakota State. he stood out a lot as well. I think mainly because his teeth were missing, but he looked like he could be a really good contributor at all five positions. Kind of give you that Elkin Jenkins kind of vibes in terms of just flexibility, right? But just the strength. He showed out to be a little faster than I thought he would be at the combine. Again, I'm not looking at the 40. I'm looking more at some of the positional drills where they're doing, pass sets and things like that. He seemed to be pretty strong, had a hell of a day.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about like speed, especially for offensive line, D line, that 10-yard split is so important for those guys because they're not the ones running 20, 30 yards downfield. They're the ones running 10, like 5 to 10 yards. And that's where that short area explosion is so important. A running back even too. Like you don't always have to have the long-term speed at a running back to be really good. Like that was like I tweeted this out after Bijan Robinson ran his 40. I was never worried about Bijan Robinson like long-term speed, like long speed. I was just curious about it. When I watched him on tape, I was always like, oh, this guy's fast. No doubt about it. But it was always like that first 20 yards. I was like, this dude's explosive. But what is his long speed? And it showed out that he's a sub 4.5 guy, which is exactly what I think is perfect for him because I kind of saw a little bit of that like mid 4.4, high 4.4, low 4.5 type. And I think that's perfect for him. It was never a negative. It was more of just like hey, he just kind of checked the box of like something I was curious about.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now let's go to the fun position here. It's your favorite position, wide receivers. There's a lot of intrigue. There's a lot of winners, I think, from the receiver perspective, but also a couple that disappointed here. I'm going to start with the disappointed just so we can end on a high note on the receivers end. Booty. I think it's Booty.
I think it's Booty too, but I'm not. I'm not 100%.
Whatever. Sure. LSU receiver had a ton of promise coming into LSU, kind of the heir apparent to Jamar Chase. Had a great freshman year, even, and over the last 2 years, he's kind of fell off that hype train, and then his testing numbers didn't do well. So he kind of disappointed both from the 40 perspective. I think he ran a 4.5 flat. Which isn't awful, but it just was disappointing to what you thought he would run. And then some of the like explosive metrics that you would hope that he would have done well in because he did run a lot out of the slot. You would think he had to change a direction and three cone and all that would have been great. And it just wasn't. It was very underwhelming. So that's one that, I know a lot of Vikings fans are keeping an eye on. The LSU, connection with Justin Jefferson. You think that maybe that would be enticing. But at the same time, maybe he just tested poorly and he's still a really good football player because the tape does show that he can play well. But maybe that testing dropped him down to an attainable spot for us. But that's somebody kind of disappointed. Now let's talk a little positive here because I don't like being negative.
Yeah, well, real quick on Booty, he's one of those guys that I was disappointed in as well. I thought you see it on tape. You see some explosion out of his game, and so to see him jump like as 20, I think it was like a sub 30-inch vertical. That's kind of just like it's surprising to see some of that like confirmation or non-confirmation bias from tape to work out. So you do wonder how his pro day is going to be. But yeah, so he was definitely a guy that I would have highlighted the same way you did of like a little bit of a disappointment, or I should say a pretty big disappointment. But highlight wise, like I think Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think he to me solidified as the wide receiver one in this class. No doubt about it. He didn't even have to run a 40, but I think everything else that he tested was like in the 96, 97 percentile in three cone. I think his 20-yard short shuttle, like those things are so important for a guy like him because kind of like a running back, the way that Smith and Jigba plays, he's that slot guy. I think he could play in and inside and out, which is important, but he's a hyper efficient slot receiver. And so I think when he shows that short area quickness and acceleration and explosion, that's what you want to see from a guy like him because that's what he shows on tape. And his route running precision during the workouts was like he looked incredible. He looked head and shoulders above better than the other guys. And if that was only like 2 weeks post being like 100% healthy for him, like holy shit, right? Like that's a guy that you just get excited about. Like he kind of like I try not to use the combine too much, but he was a guy because he missed like 90% of the 2022 season. To be able to see him come out and show what he did on the field, that might have like solidified him as like a top 10-ish type pick, right? So to me, he came away as like the clear-cut wide receiver one. I am still excited to see what his 40 is at his pro day, but like the other testing numbers kind of solidified that like that number might not matter as much because everything else was through the roof.
Yep.
So he's a guy for me that he just solidified that for me. But then also Zay Flowers and Josh Downs, two guys that I see comparable in like in rankings. Both guys ran pretty well. I think Downs might not have ran a 40 as well as you might have expected, but for me, a sub 4.5 was perfect for him because I think he's a really like to me. I think he could be like a high end slot receiver at the NFL level. Not that he can't play on the outside, but I think he's more of like that. Put him in the slot, let him win there. I think his short area quickness and his ability to accelerate and run after catch, and his ability to not be afraid of defenders and catch the ball in traffic. I love that about his game. So yeah, and so I think he showed everything I needed to see from a guy like him to be able to do that at the next level. So to me, he might be like that end of first, like early day 2 type of pick. For me, Zay Flowers, like he really is like that. Like he's not wide receiver 1. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba like solidified that. But I think Flowers showed enough in everything that he can do to be a guy that should be considered like maybe the second or third receiver off the board. Maybe he's a top 20 pick. Maybe he falls to the Vikings at 23. Like he's one of those guys for me. I think he has that really high end inside and outside ability. And he tracked at low 4.4 ability to show you that he can win downfield as well, which his tape shows too. Plus he has that short area quickness and that acceleration and run after catch. So to me, he really just like showed out everything that I saw on tape that kind of matched that testing as well.
Yeah, a lot of comparisons to Steve Smith Sr. I think it's Steve Smith Sr. Coming out of the combine there. Another guy that I thought was really impressive, shocker here, was Marvin Mims because he's kind of gone under the radar throughout this whole entire draft process, which is fine. 20 years old, so he's going to be one of the younger guys in the draft.
Yeah.
And on tape, you watch him and you're like, okay, yeah, he glides really well. Like he runs fast, you can tell. I think the arm strength of his quarterback kind of hurt him because he could have been wide open much more, but the ball didn't quite get there, so he had to slow down, throttle down. Looks like DBs are keeping up with him when they're really not. And he goes out and shows a 4.38, which again is even faster than I anticipated. Being an Oklahoma fan and watching him for many years, I was thinking probably about a 4.5, maybe to a 4.5. 4.45 to a 4.5 is kind of what I was thinking with him. And for him to go in that 4.38 just kind of shows that he has that extra gear. And then you watch the drills. He did the gauntlet with just sure hands, no hesitation at all. And then the big bomb, 60-yard bomb from Anthony Richardson, I think it was his second deep ball that he threw, hit Mims right in stride. Mims had to reach for it a bit. He almost overthrew him just a bit, but he got his paws on it, brought it in, kept it going. So, I mean, I think he had a heck of a pro day. He did really well in the short area drills as well to show that his change of direction and ability to kind of get in and out of breaks is going to be sufficient. And I think he interviewed really well in the interview pressers that you saw. So,
yeah, well, Mims is one of those guys too. He played with Caleb Williams last year, but I know a lot of that offense. He ran a lot more like screens and short area stuff because that offense just asked him is in the how am I blanking on his name? The USC coach now, Lincoln Riley. So he wasn't asked to be the deep threat consistently in that offense. So I think to your point, he didn't always get to show it. It wasn't always because of the quarterback, but it was also just because of the offense he's in. He's I think him showing that he could be more than just like a gadget player, which his film does show, but also like his speed shows you that he could be more than that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Any tight ends that stood out to you? I missed the tight end portion, honestly. I was just going to talk Braden Willis, but I've already done that quite a bit. Any tight ends that stood out to you?
I think the obvious one, Darnell Washington from Georgia. I mean, that dude kind of like an Anthony Richardson, where that dude, he's just like huge, like dude 6'7", 245, 260, I think it was. Ran a sub 4.6 40, or ran maybe right around that 4.6, which is at his size, that's ridiculous. And then I missed some of the other testing, but I know that was pretty like I know he impressed in that way. And then some of the on-field drills, he just looks the part. Like it may look like he's moving slow, but it's because he's huge. Like I think sometimes people misunderstand. Like you're huge. So when you're moving faster. It just doesn't look it because of how big you are. But
Yeah.
he's moving out there, and so he was just a guy that really impressed me. I didn't see all of the tight end work, but Darnell Washington was definitely like one of the main guys for me.
And do you think that there's like a world, a scenario where, KOC and Kwesi look at Darnell Washington and say, we have TJ Hawkinson. Let's add Washington to this room and run more 12 personnel, but have that ability to have two elite tight end playmakers on the Vikings here.
I mean, I guess we can't rule it out, but I get it'd be one of those things that I'd be a little bit surprised. I
Sure.
don't see because a guy like Washington would be great in this offense, but you'd have to spend a pretty high pick to get him. Like the Vikings obviously don't have a second, but like view him as like a second round pick, and you'd be putting a lot of resources into a position that in an offense that likes to run like spread the ball out and use 11 personnel more than most teams. I feel like it'd be kind of a wasted resource. Again, if they were to do it, it would mean that they're shifting some of that resource, which is like that would kind of predicate that. But I don't know if I see it. Now, if they did it, I wouldn't be against it. I don't know if I see it happening.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this is one half of our combine recap. I'm sure we'll get together and focus on the defensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
But, this is the offensive side of the ball here that we were able to kind of go over. Again, one more time, thank you to our sponsors, Lake Monster Brewery and That's Badass Wood Art. Go check out that'sbadasswoodart.com. A lot of great products out there, whether you're looking for sports, you're looking for fiction, you're looking for movies, music, they got a little bit of everything. If you use our discount code CT Pockets, you get 20% off one item on his site. I actually just ordered my first one. We're going to get a Randy Moss afro, big old afro Randy
Dude,
Moss,
that's
giving
gonna
us
look
a
so
thumbs
sick.
up. I'm going to put it right up here for these shows. So it'll be great. So appreciate you all listening in. Check out the content for the rest of the week. We're probably going to have little mini episodes coming out throughout the week with a lot of this free agency and team dynamics conversations happening right now. Eric Hendricks just got let go yesterday. So we're going to have more content coming out probably around that kind of stuff. We have two old bloggers coming up this weekend with Dave and Darren. So make sure you check that out. And a lot of great content coming up here. So be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here, and Skol Vikings.